how to live a passionate life and make that leap into entrepreneurship. That's today's show. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris. I'm the host and founder of Investing in Real Estate. I'm the founder of Morris Invest, and we've rehabbed hundreds of thousands of homes. And we focus a lot here on this program about the idea of entrepreneurship, productivity, but finding your passion and getting tied into what that actually is. Because, you know, it's one thing to just wake up every day and blindly get in your pajamas and walk downstairs and sit down and sit behind a computer. If you're not passionate about it, it's not going to stick. And I'm excited because our guest today on the show, his name is Trevor Mauch. He took a long time, I think, to arrive at his passion. And he's written about the ebbs and flows of finding your balance and entrepreneurship. What do you want to do with your life? What gets you excited about getting out of bed in the morning? He's a real estate investor, but he's also a guy who's created a powerful startup that I know so many real estate investors use. He created the startup called Carrot, it helps small businesses generate inbound online leads more effectively. So everyone I know who kind of gets into real estate and is going to start to attract leads uses Carrot. You've got to use it. He also has a great podcast, by the way, and I'm a big fan. He was kind enough to have me as a guest on that show. It's called the CarrotCast Podcast, and they do interviews and really thoughtful looks at entrepreneurship and business leaders. Trevor, welcome to today's show.
Clayton, man, I appreciate it, and I'm honored. We were talking about it just a few minutes ago when you were on the CarrotCast, and dude, your podcast is one of the first ones on my podcast listener right now, dude, and I just binged on it a couple weeks ago. So I'm grateful of the time that you invest in the podcast. I'm happy to be on it.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a real treat to have you here on the show. And you know, what I like about you, Trevor, and I've been reading your stuff for a long time, and what I love about you is your honesty. You know, your vulnerability. And I think for men, it can be a little bit more difficult for us to sort of admit that things don't always go very well. You know, we kind of put on that manly face and the stiff upper lip. But you write about the idea of these ebbs and flows in business and life and trying to find your passion. How did you kind of arrive at that idea and knowing that, you know, I want to help other people embrace this idea, this back and forth, that not everything is going to be roses?
Man, that's a really good question. So going way back, my dad is probably one of my biggest inspirations, my dad and my grandfather. And sounds like kind of similar to you. My dad lost his job, and I was old enough to know what happened, but not really old enough to really soak it in fully. I was probably 10, 12 years old. And so I got the chance to see him at a job that he liked, lost the job because the company went out of business. And then he was in this period of his life where it could have gone either way. He could have been, you know, just completely miserable or hunting down trying to find jobs like a lot of other guys were in the early 90s. Or he could have done what he did and make that decision to start a company. And so I got to see the worst of the worst as an entrepreneur through my dad's eyes, basically as a kid. And I also got to see the fruits of that labor. And I learned as much from the pains and the things that went wrong as he's grown his business as I did from the wins. And so I really took that moving forward, going, okay, as I grow my businesses and people come to me and ask for advice, tell them about the wins isn't where we learn the most. You know, I have a really, really good mentor of mine. He works in my offices here, and he's grown multiple companies in the tens of millions and sold 2 companies well in the tens of millions. And he always tells me, he's like, man, some of your best education is from your losses and your pains, not your wins. So I think that's really where I'm like, you know what? One of our core values at our company is transparency. I'm going to share everything so you guys can learn what I'm going through, because you're probably going through the same thing. Let's help each other through it.
That's great. And we're going to dive into your company here in a little bit. We'll talk about Carrot and how you came up with that idea, which is great. And over your shoulder, if you're watching the video version of this, you can see over the little carrots over your shoulder there in your office.
That's right. You got to have fun, man. You got to have fun.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I've got all my Star Trek and Star Wars stuff in my office here, so it keeps me happy. So I want to talk about some of those pains that you mentioned. You watched your dad go through that. You know, I heard something recently that Jim Koch had said. He's the founder of Samuel Adams. And he said, you know, there's a difference between when something is dangerous, it's not necessarily scary. When something is scary, it's not necessarily dangerous, right? You know, it might be dangerous to climb on the side of a mountain, but it might not be scary. You might you might have a lot of skills as a mountain climber. It might be scary to leave your job, quit your 9-to-5 job, or lose your job, but it's not dangerous. You're not going to die, right? It's just a scary time.
Yeah.
When you put those things into perspective, I think most people have a misplaced way of looking at those things. They think quitting their 9-to-5 job is going to be dangerous, when in fact it's not. What did you watch with your dad in his entrepreneurial journey that stood out to you in that way?
Man, I think the biggest thing with him was that there was no other option. That was one really big thing when I was young, that there was never okay, I'm going to start this company, and if it works this year, I'm going to keep doing it. If it doesn't, I'm going to go find something else. It was always, I'm going to start this company, and I'm going to figure out how to make it work, and that's my only option. So I think when you make that decision, fear and danger and things like that, they start to take a back seat, because you go, I know it's going to be hard, but I'm not turning around. There's no plan B. This is going to happen. And when I graduated college, I didn't want to go and get a job. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't know what I want to do. I got a marketing degree, and I've quickly learned I knew nothing about marketing out of college. And I gave myself a year, and I'm like, all right, to me, that didn't feel dangerous. It didn't feel risky at all, because like we were talking before, I think many times as entrepreneurs, we flip that risk profile. We often look at risk in a completely different way, where most people look at risk the first way that you mentioned, where it is, if I do this, what would happen, or what could happen if things go wrong? I look at it as, if I don't do this, what's guaranteed to happen if I stay in my current path? And while I saw my friends going out and getting good jobs, in my brain, I'm going, okay, where's that going to go in 10 or 15 or 20 years? Like, it's a good job now, but if I do that, what am I guaranteeing that's going to happen? And so that's what I've adopted, and I learned that from my dad, and I really adopted that into my lifestyle. And I'm not going to say it's something that everyone can really naturally think that way. One thing that does really help, I think, is looking at worst case scenarios. So anytime you're looking at risk and danger and things like that, when you really boil down what the actual worst case scenario in that situation is, it's usually not quite as bad as you think it is.
Right.
And I do that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, even like jumping into real estate investing, right? People say to me, well, it seems so risky. Like, real estate investing? Like, are you aware that real estate investing is like the least risky thing you can do, for investing? It's not a stock that can go down to $0 in value. It's what's the worst that can happen, to your point? Well, it could burn down, right? Then you've got insurance, so you get an insurance check on the property. What's the worst that could happen? You could have an eviction. Okay, that happens for a few weeks. You get a new tenant in there. What's the worst that can happen, right? And when you start like figuring that out, you realize, the con list is not very large. The pro list is much larger.
Yep, exactly. And that's one thing I think a lot of people should do. And I always, here's a piece of paper right here. If you guys are watching the video version of this, if you're not using like the vertical line down the middle trick, it's upside down. I was walking through one of my team members with an exercise. That's all scribbles on that one. But I always use the line down the line down the middle of the piece of paper thing, because it visually separates things. You can go pros, cons, you can do risks, you can do reward, you can do whatever. And anytime I'm making a decision like that I really need to get in and evaluate, I whip out the piece of paper, line down the middle, and then you put your two kind of halves of the equation on each side. And so that's when I'll do it. I'll do risk reward, or I'll do worst case scenario, best case scenario. And that way I can just brain dump on that stuff. And then you have some real decisions to make and go, okay, well, these worst case scenario things, how do I protect against those? Like, okay, this right here, I can do that by getting insurance. This right here, well, maybe the worst case scenario in buying that rental property is I have a vacancy for 6 months, and then I can't cover the debt service. Well, how can I make sure to abate that risk of having a vacancy for 6 months? Well, maybe I need to get a property manager to help me with that. And I just love going down the line down the middle, just nail those risks in those worst case scenarios, and then your fear and the risk, like, whoa, that's completely achievable, man. Now let me hit it and go.
I love that. So you've started a number of companies. I mean, you've started a number of different businesses over the years. When you look at those experiences, why did you go from that and all those startups to real estate? What led you down the path of real estate investing, real estate entrepreneurship, putting together Carrot? And we'll dive into the mechanics of Carrot in a moment. But why real estate?
Man, so real estate, my grandfather invested in real estate. So that was one thing I remember as a kid. I'd be going to his rental properties, and I'd even mow some of the lawns at the rental properties, and I'd see the inner workings, and I saw how he interacted with his tenants, and his tenants loved him. And that's all that I saw when I was a kid, was he had these other properties that people lived in. They seemed to enjoy him. He seemed to enjoy what he was doing. And they were good places to live. And then as I got older, I'm like, oh, so they actually pay you money to live there. And I started to kind of figure out the financial side of it. And he had a great career as a coach for college and things like that. But where most of his income and wealth came in the latter years was from real estate. And that's where his stability and security came. So I had that great example of my father. Once he got his feet underneath him as an entrepreneur, he really started to invest heavily into real estate, usually for his business, but he did own some houses too. And man, it happened in college. So real estate was my very first ever entrepreneurial pursuit that was real, other than just doing some random landscaping projects in college for people. But I bought my first rental property when I was 21, junior year in college. It was a fourplex, a 4-unit apartment building near the college that I went to in Southern Oregon, called OIT, Oregon Institute of Technology. And so that's where it started. All the other startups came out of that, So it's like, I really enjoy real estate because I can see that, I can feel that I can walk on it. It's not going to go away. But I don't want to do that on a daily income thing. So that's where the rental property thing came in. My daily income thing, dude, that's where I love marketing. I love inspiring people. That's where I'm going to create businesses that create cash flow that go into real estate. So that's kind of how it happened as far as the order. And I love it. I love it doing that way. You got to have income coming in to put into real estate in some way. I just choose my startups as the daily income, the active income.
And you're so passionate about it. That's what I love. And I love your website too, because there's a lot of really motivating things on your website. And you can tell that you enjoy the process of entrepreneurship, of creating and coming up with ideas and then putting your team to work on them. It seems like, what I love about you too, I can tell you're like a fastidious person. It seems like your office is pretty clean. Like you got, getting your stuff organized. Here's the project. Here's how I'm going to implement things. Here I'm going to take step 1, step 2, step 3. So when you first came up with this idea of Carrot, where did this come from? Was this like, hey, I'm in the shower and I got this idea. I'm in bed. I got to write this down right now. Where did this idea come from? And walk through some of the mechanics of what Carrot is all about.
So I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper on it too, because we started the podcast with, I don't know why I have a ping pong ball in my hand, but I do.
Well, wait a minute, I thought you were clean. What? Now random crap right on your desk.
We've got the ping pong table over there, and I think I picked this up off the floor. Anyway, I've got a ping pong ball in my hand. So no, man. So before Carrot came along, something else had to happen. And I think this applies to every single person that listens to this podcast, whether you're going to start a startup, whether you're going to be in real estate, whatever. We all go through fundamental human being ebbs and flows. One thing that when we look at our lives, it's almost like our lives and our happiness is kind of like a stock market ticker, right? You hope that it trends upward. You hope that it trends upward and into the right, but there's going to be peaks and there's going to be valleys along the way. And right before Carrot came along, man, I was in a massive valley. So I had started a couple companies before that, done pretty well, put some of that money into real estate. But I wasn't doing what I enjoyed to do. I wasn't waking up in the morning fired up about my work. We had a good company making good income, great business partner. It's a very small team, no employees, a couple contractors. But man, I was doing work that I wasn't enjoying, that didn't light me up, that later I would find out weren't my unique abilities. And we can dive into unique ability here in a little bit, if you want. And I hit this period of my life in about 2011, 2012. Where I just kind of, enough is enough, right? I had a family friend of ours pass away, early 30s, 3 kids. They were planning their retirement, talking about certain things, for 10, 20, 30 years out. And he wasn't going to be there for dinner that night. He had a brain aneurysm and he was gone instantly. And that right there was really sobering to me, because in this weird part of my life where I owned the business, but I hated working there, where I would sleep in until 9 or 10 in the morning because I wasn't excited about doing the work, where sometimes I wouldn't go out of my house for 2 or 3 days because I worked at home. And that's just all miserable. From the outside in, things looked amazing. From the inside, I wasn't dead inside, but I was close, right? Didn't feel passionate about what I was doing. So at that point, I decluttered. I got rid of my shares in many companies, several companies, startups that I had invested in. I sold my half of the publishing company to my business partner. And I had to declutter my life in order to find me during that period. And there's a few things we can dig in as deep or as surface levels we have time for and you want to. But there's a few things I went through that year, that 18 months, to get my mindset completely shifted and to really find that path toward finding my purpose, which opened Carrot up as an opportunity then.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that because that's something you write about on your website, which is helping people sort of unlock that passion.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just chasing after money or chasing after something that's just going to bring you money, but you're not passionate about it, it's not going to last. I've tried a lot of those shiny object things over my life, and they never last because they're not authentic. So how did you begin to lay that process over those 18 months in order to make that big step?
Dude, and I was like you where, oftentimes we have these revenue goals because when you're looking to get away from a job or your back's against the wall, revenue is the first thing. But one thing I learned early on is if we tie our happiness to a dollar amount or to a number, you're never going to be happy because numbers that never end. There's always a bigger number. And as soon as you get close to that number, then it's a new number and it's a new number. So that was one of those things was I'm like, okay, this next business is not going to be based, my happiness and goals are not going to be based off of revenue. And I sat down and wrote 5 non-negotiables that year. And I'm like, all right, my business has to do these 5 things. And if it doesn't do these 5 things, I'm not going to do it. I'm just like, frankly, just not going to do it, or I'm going to shift the business. And one of them was have fun. That was like a core thing because I wasn't having enough fun in my previous business. And this doesn't just apply to people who are entrepreneurs. This applies to jobs. If you have a job, make sure you have your non-negotiables. What are those things that you've got to do that job has to provide for you in order to make you happy in life? Because we shouldn't be clocking in at 9, clocking out at 5, and then we have our fun after that or on weekends. That's not why humans are made. So when I went through that phase, I'm like, man, I've got so much going on. I need to declutter so I can focus on something well. Because I had realized up to that point, those previous 2 or 3 years, man, I was trying to find happiness by doing a bunch of things. Maybe if I do this, that'll make me happy. Maybe if I try that, that'll make me happy. And none of them did. And I ended up, my friend passing away, that gave me that kind of dose of mortality that I'm not going to be here forever. So it gave me urgency, the urgency that I needed. I desperately needed that mortality and that urgency to go, I got to do this now. Because I might not be here when I'm 32 or 33 or 35 or 60. Let me do it now. And the next thing was, well, if I'm going to do it now, what am I going to do? I got to focus in on something and do it the best I can possibly do it. And then the next thing was, well, shoot, what am I going to do? Because I'm really passionate about like mountain biking and golfing and things like that, but I don't think I'm going to build a business around those. Everyone says build a business around your passion. And I had this so stuck in my brain that that's the way you got to do it. And all these things just were swirling in my brain. Out of that year, these couple things came, and I want people to recognize these and see if you recognize them in your life. First of all, I completely ditched the notion that a business had to be built around your passion. I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit banging my head against the wall that my business has to be built around my passion. My business should fuel my passion. My job should fuel my passion. I need to set it up so it does that. It doesn't have to be based on my passion. You look at people who are professional golfers or professional mountain bike riders, when they retire from golfing, they don't use golfing as something to relax because it was their job for 30 years. When we're working and doing what we're working, we use golfing use your example of that as a way to relax because that's not what we do for a career. So the second that you turn your passion into a career, oftentimes that passion is something you don't enjoy as much. So I'm like, I don't want to have that happen. The next thing was purpose, right? Like we're all chasing our purpose and we're all like, man, what's my purpose in life? And I would make up purposes that I was like, well, this is my purpose to help inspire 1 million entrepreneurs. And it sounded cool. And it was something cool you could put on the website or the wall or whatever. And what I found was, man, it never hit me at my gut. It's like you can feel it when something is just resonating with you at a core level. That's like, man, that's it.
Right.
And for me, and I'm sure for you too, it's not something you have to work at. It's something that you just find yourself always fitting that in. Like this podcast, dude, I love doing this. It's part of my purpose. I love amplifying leaders. I love amplifying people to have better lives. And I just find myself doing that every day, not even trying. That's you're getting close to that when you see that happening. And so looking at purpose, and I'm going to talk about how we started Carrot, but the purpose side of it, man, I couldn't find it. And I'm like, you know what? I've decluttered. I've got rid of all these other business interests except for this one that's creating some income. So I still have some income coming in. Carrot still at that time wasn't what I was going to focus on. Carrot didn't exist at that time. The idea wasn't even there. But I said, you know what? My purpose this year, 2012, is to just do the best I can possibly do this year in everything in my life. Small stuff, big stuff, being a husband, being a father. And I can't do the best if I've got a lot going on. I'm going to focus on one business idea. I'm going to do it the entire year. If I'm 8 months in and it seems like it's going to fail, I'm getting discouraged, I'm still going to do it. I'm going to give it the whole darn year. And if at the end of the year it seems like, man, I did the best I could possibly do at that business and it just isn't it, sweet, I'll switch. And that fundamental shift, man, is what opened me up to look at those bigger ideas.
And you allowed yourself to fail a little bit too along the way.
Exactly. And I quit banging my head against the wall to find my purpose, because literally my purpose changed that year. It's just to do the best I can possibly do as a human being at everything. I remember vividly, man, and you mentioned a fastidious person. I'm the opposite. Like, I'm not a clean person at all. And my wife is a very clean person. And so, I'm the guy who has 100 sticky notes. That's an exaggeration, but I'm the guy who has a lot of sticky notes up on the wall because I have to move things around and do this and do that. I've got a ping pong ball, man. I don't know what that's about, but anyway, so I would find myself at home, opening up my drawer, for my shirts in my closet. And for my whole life up to that point, I was in my mid to late 20s at that time. I'd always been messy, and I was like, well, I was messy. My mom isn't the cleanest person in the world. My dad kind of is, but I just gave myself permission that, well, I'm just not the cleanest person in the world. Therefore, that's who I am. I've always got to have my spaces that are messy, right? Everything else in the house completely clean, but babe, let me have my space that's messy. It's just mine, right? And I opened up my dresser drawer, which I would usually fold once every 6 months, and then I'd try to find that shirt at the bottom, and it would mess up the shirts above. And this one time after I made that commitment that was my purpose that year, I saw that messy dresser drawer, and literally, like, in that moment, I'm like, that's not the best I can do. It's not the best I can do. So I took all my shirts out, got rid of half of them, pared it down, plain shirts on the right, printed shirts on the left. It's been like that ever since 2012. And my closet, several weeks later, open up my closet. It's messy. I'm like, this isn't the best I can do. Take everything out, got rid of half my clothes. Everything's perfect. Has been like that way since. And I started tackling things in my life like that. And I'm saying this because if anyone is in a phase where you're not in your ideal life, or you seem like you're all over the place, or you seem like you're unfocused, you're not sure what to do, I think one of the best things you can do is declutter first. Focus on doing the little things right in your life. The big things are then going to come. And that's when Carrot came.
I love
that idea came.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, read Marie Kondo's book on the magic art of tidying up. I read that a few years ago, and once you realize that you just got so much crap floating around your house, and like all this extra crap that we accumulate, clean up, declutter. That's why I like your office space there. It looks clean from my vantage point, clean, organized, like focused. Here's our mission here at Carrot. Here's what we do. And let's stick to that goal. Like, that's what I try to really do with my company, with Morris Invest. It's like, this is what we do. We are focused on helping people achieve financial freedom. If it doesn't fit that model, if it's not in there, then we don't get chased we don't go after shiny object syndrome. I have people, I'm looking at my inbox right now. I've got 200 emails. Half of them want something from me that has nothing to do with me helping our investors. And so it's a distraction. Yep. This is digital clutter, the same way that shirt drawer was physical clutter. And it's a matter of like paring down and getting focused. No, when you pared down and got focused on Carrot, where did that idea come from? What exactly is Carrot, and how can people maybe start to employ it and use it in their life?
Yeah, so Carrot, in a nutshell, we work with a little over 3,000 real estate investors right now, about 3,200 from all across the country, and our clients generate more leads from the web. So when someone goes to Google and searches "sell my house fast" or investment properties in insert city or whatever, our platform generates more online leads than any other platform in the world right now for our clients in the investment market. And so where that came was in that period where I was building businesses and creating that active cash flow or that active income so I could put it into real estate. We got really good at generating leads. And for myself, for tenants for my properties, that's where a lot of our tenants came from. Is when you would Google, Klamath Falls Apartments or whatever, our websites would come up and we get leads there, and we wouldn't have to pay a property manager to get those. Now I've got a property manager doing those now, but then I didn't. And then we started to work with other real estate investors, helping them get buyer leads and motivated seller leads and off-market leads. That's what we're really focused on. And so when that time period came where my mind had kind of decluttered, we'd already had, a few dozen, 50, 60, something like that. I don't remember the exact number of people that we had helped set up websites for as this complete this side thing that I actually despise, because we just set it up because they needed it. And we had this other product line that was related in real estate. And I'm like, there's no good options for a real estate investor that's focused on performance. And the previous decade, as far as small business websites had gone, everyone saw the TV commercials and everything for a decade going, get online, right? You've got your GoDaddies and your Wixes and Weebly's and Squarespace, and all those companies grew, and your mom and pop web development shops. Like that, those all grew from your 2001 through 2012, 13, maybe right around there. But the problem was, during that decade, everyone got online that was going to get online, and there was no inherent advantage to be online anymore, because all your competitors were online. And if you guys were all online using those tools that weren't focused on performance, on how to actually get you in front of your prospects, and then once they're there, convert them into a qualified lead at a high rate, then you're not going to win. So, and that's what we had focused on. We'd focused on performance for 3 or 4 years in my consulting company and in my other company. And so we're like, all right, people obviously need this. I've got this big idea now that I think we can make as big as we want to make it. It's not just for real estate, it's for small business in general. There's millions of small businesses. And I feel this is the next wave, is performance. How do we help a small business crack through that clutter and perform versus their competitors now? And so we're like, I know the real estate market well. I know how to get leads there because I've been doing it for a while. I generate tens of thousands of leads myself there with clients and myself in that market. And we launched our first product there. And you go back to one of those non-negotiables I mentioned of fun. It's got to be fun. And that's one of our core values here at Carrot too, is I'm like, man, if we're going to start this business, for me, I wasn't excited if it was just boxed into one industry and just into real estate investors. But I knew we could start there. I knew we could make a difference there and do really well for our client. And I'm like, man, what is a business, a name that would be fun, that we could brand and we could just have fun with? If we're not going to make any money with this business, at least we'll have fun doing it, right?
Right.
And so I started to think up what should a website be for a small business. It shouldn't be a brochure. It shouldn't be something where just people find and browse. It should be a carrot. It's a carrot that they find, they latch onto that carrot, and they become a customer or a lead. And so we went with Carrot, and we've got Agent Carrot, Investor Carrot, and things like that we're rolling forward with now. But it's exciting, man. Fun stuff, and
Well, I love that, and I love that you started with real estate investing as the entrance point, because you knew it, you understood it, and then expanding from there, seeing the bigger picture of where Carrot can go and helping other businesses that have nothing to do with real estate investing, and being able to bring leads in for the dog washing business down the street, that, how you're managing, internet traffic and leads, and all of those things come together. It's really amazing. Where do you see Carrot going over the next 5 years?
Man, so we've got a 5-year vision that's written, and the team is a part of making it. And honestly, here's the thing. So I think when you talk to a lot of people who have a startup or have a business, they've got this revenue number, right? And that's one of their primary goals, is growth. And one thing that we do our planning every year. We've got a very, very dialed in process in how we do our annual planning now that we created, and we love it. We're getting ready to do our annual planning this next month for 2018. And 2 years ago, so this company's 3.5 years old right now. 2 years ago, when we set a revenue target, and we go, okay, sweet revenue target. Do we think we can get there? Is it exciting enough? Yeah. But then we asked one extra question. It was, why does that number matter? Does that number really matter, or are we just going for growth's sake? Because you talk about freedom number all the time. There's freedom number with your business too, where if you go, well, here's my number. If I want to get over 50 grand a month or 10,000 a month or whatever that number is, and then when that happens, I'll start to dial back, right? Because then it's a lifestyle business. Well, we had got to that point within 18 months, which at that time was about 50 grand a month. I have a business partner who owns 20%. So you whittle it down. It was a very respectable income, but not getting rich. And we asked that number that year. And it was like, all right, what are we going to do this next year in year 2? Like 1.2 million was the number that we pegged, which seemed like a big number for us. So it would have tripled our business at that time. And we said, why does this matter? And the reason that it mattered now, and this is going to answer your question on where we're going in the future, is growth for us today isn't related to revenue at all. Now, do we have revenue goals? Totally do, because you've got to as a business. You have to be financially and fiscally responsible for your employees and your customer base. So we have strong revenue goals. We hit that 1.2 million that next year. We're well into the millions, multiple millions now. But every single year we ask that question, why is it important that we hit this revenue number? And it always comes back to platform and influence. And I'm going, okay, the larger we get is the larger platform that we have to then put our message out there to inspire other business owners and amplify leaders to go build great businesses that they're happy with, that they're passionate about, to build jobs and create jobs that other people are loving working in. And also to elevate the expectation that people have when they work with the company. Like, we get so many people come back after working with us and they're like, man, the experience working with you guys, it was like I've never, ever experienced. And I've been in the industry for 30 years. That's why we're growing, dude. So our 5-year vision, revenue-wise, we want to get to 10 million. I think we can. I know we can. It's going to be hard. Not going to be easy. But the cool thing about that is what happens when we get there. Is we're going to have so much more clout and influence that we can influence more entrepreneurs and leaders into doing business the right way. You can be insanely profitable and do a business that completely elevates your community, that elevates all of your clients to do better and expect more of businesses that they work with. And I want to help other leaders like you, man, do the same thing. So that's why we exist.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, it's been my real treat to have Trevor here on the show today, and we could just talk all afternoon. I know, I always say sometimes you get guests on the show that you're going to be like lifelong friends with, and that's the sense I get just talking with Trevor. So we have a lot in common. So can't wait to meet you in person and sit down, and we'll probably have a lot to talk about over the years. So I'm excited for your growth. I'm excited for your passion. I'm excited to see where Carrot has gone. I remember when it started. I was there watching it when it started. So I'm excited to see this amazing growth. So if you are a real estate investor, a wholesaler particularly, who, you've heard us talk about wholesaling here on the show. If you are looking to set up that website in order to drive leads for wholesaling in your backyard for a real estate investor, check out Carrot. We're going to have links up in the show notes page, so we'll drive a lot of people over there to check it out and check out your services. And also, please go check out the CarrotCast Podcast. You can check that out wherever fine podcasts are sold. And you can also check out his YouTube channel as well, because he's got some great guests over there as well. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us on the Investing in Real Estate show. We really appreciate it. And much luck to you in the future, my friend.
Thank you, Clayton. I appreciate it, man. Big time.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for downloading and subscribing to the show. We publish this show 3 times a week. It's a lot of work, but that's why we do it, because, we love to do it. So check it out. We'll be back on Monday with another episode of the Investing in Real Estate podcast. But if you listen to what Trevor had to say on today's show, it's not about just finding your passion. It's about finding that work that's going to make you fuel the passion that you live by. The thing that gets you out of bed in the morning is going to help drive that real motivation for you. So go out there, take action, use real estate investing as a vehicle to help fuel your other passions, whether it's mountain biking, hang gliding, hot air balloon riding. I don't know what it is. Go do it. We'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks, Trevor.
Hey, thank you.